There's so many shit mentioned. She fully usually here. There's the this is the first thing we're going to do. Oh yeah. Ready? Come on. Cell phones on silent. Don't want your phone to ring in the middle of class. Don't want your phone to ring. Posso ligar a sua escala, porque isso vai achar um campo de gás e prazo que só tem mais envolvimento. What do we need to shoot? How much? Is that really class? No. Don't even drink about thinking these guys. Why is like here? Yeah, I should have been here like the curtain open, don't look, nobody look. Directly. Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, I did. A couple of you guys have been I find some home at beach. They call me a refrigerator. Three guys. They call me the cool book. You know what? They also call me Shannon. This is the reason I'm oh. And they're coming out in the house. No, but it's Yo, very hungry. We actually we got a class you made us. So I can't really. We can make a call to chat. We can make a call to chat. What's up? I don't know what's going on. It's like that's strange. It's like the day that the first revenue was arrested. Yeah, exactly. Hey, I ultimate, consider the ultimate. Says what is permissible? No, what is forbidden is forbidden. The secret lesson to how you know something is hard to Chat, where did you put it? What? Will it lead to a mitzvah or the opposite? It's not just be like, will this lead to a mitzvah? I'll give you an example. Chocolate can be very vitalizing. It can give you a lot of energy, but at the same time, it's such a I like these candy chocolate. Yeah, you don't have to eat one thing you have is free.
very important because we finished talking it's important. First we're talking about the please turn on your cell phones. Lights up.
Recorded and it's going to keep you down, right?
So Abby, sit down there. So get yourself.
Your quality with Vayigash of Parshas Vayigash. Today is Chof Aleph Kislev Tavshin Samik Tes.
I don't know the pocket. This is why I put it in this pocket.
Yeah.
All right, so we're turning this week's Parsha to chapter 11 Zayin, Pasuk Tes and Yud and Yud Aleph. We meet up at this at the beginning of the Parsha with the famous chapter of the Chalimas of Yosef, the dreams of Yosef HaTzadik. And there are two dreams which are reported here, which he himself dreamt at the beginning of the Parsha. And then we have at the end of the Parsha the dreams which were dreamt by the Sarai Pari, and Yosef's interpretation of those dreams. And then we have at the beginning of next week's Parsha, the Pari dreamt dreams, and Yosef also interpreted the dreams. So we see that not only was Yosef himself a receiver of dreams, but he was also a interpreter of dreams. Now in this section we see that he dreamt true dreams beneged to himself and his brothers in the first dream, and in the second dream beneged to his father and his mother, whoever that may be, and his brothers. And in both of the dreams it is told or indicated a tremendous bitul on the part of his brothers, and eventually even that of Yaakov Avinu and whoever his wife may be, a bitul of hishtachavoyah, complete prostration and bowing down to Yosef. And we see that this causes, in the first case, it causes anger on the part of the brothers, and it causes them to become even more hateful towards Yosef. And in the second dream, we see that it causes what the Torah calls kino, vayikanu boy echov. In other words, envy or jealousy, which is aroused by the second dream. So we're going to pay attention now to the second dream, and we're going to examine a Rashi in reference to that, and on the basis of that we're going to try and draw an outlook on this whole Indian at what you might call the chapter of the Chaloims. So Pasuk Tes in chapter Lamed Zayin tells us, Vayachaloim oid chaloim acher. Yosef dreamed a further dream, in addition to the dream that he had about them being in the field and gathering the sheaves with his brothers together in the field. This is an additional dream. Vayisaper oisei le'echo, and he told it to his brothers. Vayemer Hine chalamti chaloim oid. I've dreamt an even further dream. Vehine hashemesh vehayoreach, the sun and the moon. Veyachad also kechavim, and 11 stars mishtachavim li, are bowing down to me. Vayisaper el aviv ve'elechov, and he told his father and his brothers. So Rashi immediately noticed that he's already told the brothers. What do we need to be told? He told the brothers again. So Rashi says that he told it over again in front of the brother. He told his father when he was in front of his brother. However, what happens is, by Yigar, boy over here, that his father literally renounced him, or how do you call it, reprimanded him, shouted or corrected him sharply. By Yigar means to, call somebody to order in a very sharp way. By Yigar boy of Eve, and his father corrected him and said, Vayim Eloi ma achaloi mazeh asher chalamt. What sort of a dream is this that you have dreamed? Havoi novoi. Then, or will it then happen that we will come? Havoi novoi, meaning a double question to emphasize the question. If then we will come, who? Anivi mecha, I and my, me, I and your mother, viachecha and your brothers, lishtachavesh lecho otzo, to bow down to you to the ground. Is this going to be the case? That's all. Vayikanu boyo echov, and that caused envy on the part of his brothers. However, the Oviv Shomar Sadova, his father, however, guarded the matter. Rashi says that guarded the matter means that he was waiting and looking forward for the thing to come. He was waiting for it to happen and to come true. In other words, Yaakov was convinced, according to that in effect the dream was going to actually come true. So ask the Shaila, why did he shout at Yosef? Immediately the simple reader is puzzled. Why did he shout at Yosef? And why did he say, will then I and your mother rather, and your brothers come to bow down to you? Now we notice that shouting at Yosef on the part of Yaakov Avinu is also an interpretation of the dream. It's what we call a pisorim acholim. And nobody seems to differ with that. Yaakov Avinu just seems to have everybody's agreement on that part, that that's in effect what the dream implies. The question is, how much it might happen. But that's the implication of the dream. Everybody seems to assume, Yaakov Avinu takes with the Peshitas, that the Shemesh and the Yoreach are referring to him and his wife, whoever that may happen to be, and he calls her Imcho, your mother. And that we're going to come and bow down to you. And so the 11 stars who surround the Shemesh V'Yoreach, those are the 11 brothers, and they're all going to bow down to you. So prostrate themselves in the full sense means to bow down to the ground with this full prostration. Is this really going to happen? Sort of shouting it at him. But that is in effect the interpretation of the dream. Nobody seems to differ on that score. We notice that in the previous case, also nobody seemed to differ on what was in effect the interpretation. Yosef certainly doesn't differ. He doesn't say, well, listen here, but that's not exactly what I really meant with the Chalom. Maybe it's kach v'kach. Yosef remains perfectly quiet in a form of acceptance of the interpretation of the dream. And in the previous case, also, the brothers, by objecting to the dream, they, in effect, make a interpretation of the dream. Could they say, are we then going to come and bow down? Are you going to rule over us in a way that we'll have to bow down to you? That's already an interpretation of the dream. Once again, nobody seems to differ, and Yosef once again remains in complete silence, meaning that yes, that is in effect the interpretation of the dream. So therefore we can understand why the brothers got angry, because they understood that he dreamt a dream which its interpretation was that they were going to bow down to him as subjects to a king. Therefore they said to him, are you then going to rule over us? And everybody seems to agree with that idea, and nobody questions that is in effect interpretation. So we see here that Yosef's dreams are not in the way that we've seen dreams up to now in the Torah. We've seen dreams where people have visitations from the Eibusha directly. And the Eibusha comes directly to people, and he tells them this and this is going to be the case, and this is the situation, and this is going to happen. And we know that's going to happen because it was a direct visitation from Hashem himself. And oddly enough, just a few pages back in the Chumash, we had a very amazing example of that, but everybody just reads past it, doesn't seem to notice it. But we have one of the biggest Rishoyim that's mentioned in the whole Chumash, and that's Lavan Ho'arami. He's called Lavan the deceiver. Yeah, Lavan, who, according to certain authorities, he is a very, very severe Rasha. A very, very, very unpleasant figure, Lavan. What do we see by him when he was chasing after Yaakov? What happened to him just before he caught up with Yaakov? It's written that he had a dream, and the Eibusha appeared to him in the dream and told him he had this and that. And he told him what he must do to Yankov Avinu. So we see that a dream where the Eibusha can appear to somebody, it's written clearly over there that it was B'chaloima Halayla. It wasn't any other way, but it was in a dream that occurs to one at night. That would later imply the union of sleep. A dream. And the Eibusha told this Lavan very important thing. So we see there can be a dream where the Eibusha himself appears to a man. Why would the Eibusha do that? Why, if he wanted to talk to a person, all of a sudden you woke up that you got to leave? Well, you could have done that before, no? It's anyway, we see that there's such a thing where the Eibusha appears to people and tells them directly. Why does it happen in a halom? Why does it happen in a dream? If the Eibusha wants to tell them, he can tell them directly. So therefore we see that Moshe Rabbeinu later is called the Adon Kol HaNaviim, the Lord of all the prophets, in the sense that the Eibusha appeared to him, Ponim El Ponim, had he got face to face, and even when he was awake, and even when he was standing, or in his normal function, the Eibusha would appear to him and tell him certain inyanim. And so therefore that's a very unusual thing. We're told in other places that for people to receive a visitation in the form of prophecy, they had to have a certain bittul of their goof. There had to be a certain isbatlis of their whole situation in order that the Eibusha should appear to them. So therefore sleep is a form of his battlers. When you're asleep, your whole body goes into a state of dormancy in your mind and other inyanim, and then you become a sort of a vehicle whereby the Eibusha can appear to you. The greatness of Moshe Rabbeinu was that he was able to be makabel the nevuah b'li bittul haguf. And it was brought down at the end of the first Maimon in the Basi Lagani, that the Rebbe brings over there that there were certain Nevi'im that they had to have what's called bittul kol u'b'sheyim, and bittul kol haguf, bittul kol ha'inyanim, in order that the divine speech should be able to appear to them. But in the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, it wasn't necessary. So here in the case of Yosef, it would appear that since he calls it a haloim, that he actually slept. The Eibusha appeared to him in the form of a sleeping, not in the form of an awakening. Therefore he wasn't in that regard like Moshe Rabbeinu. And also it wasn't a direct visitation from the Eibusha. It was, after all, a series of symbols. And those symbols needed what's called interpretation. They had to be niftorim, as we say in the Lashon. They had to be interpreted, and the brothers themselves interpreted the first cholim, and the second cholim was Yankov Avinu interpreted the cholim. However, the cholim needed interpretation. It wasn't a direct visitation of the Eibusha to that person, and therefore we have to say that it wasn't mamish nevuah, it wasn't mamish prophecy, because prophecy, the Eibusha talks directly to the person. And that's what the Alter Rebbe brings in Shara Yichud V'Emunah, right near the end of the Perik base over there. The Alter Rebbe writes that the union of a nevuah is divine dibur, where the Eibusha speaks mamish to the person, and he's masbadin over there benegeh to the oisias or elyonim, such things as how does the Eibusha use letters, etc., etc. So we see that this is not nevuah, and yet on the other hand we can't say it's just some sort of a cholim that everybody had to break their heads for months to work out what the heck did it mean. We see immediately the brothers came up with an interpretation, and it seems to be perfectly right. And Yankov Avinu immediately came up with the interpretation, and he also seems to be right. However, comes along Rashi, and Rashi says, Vayigash boy Achihu, Vayigash boy Ovium, I'm sorry, that the Yankov Avinu shouted at him, Lefisha hoya matil sino olo. because he was bringing hate from the brothers upon himself. And therefore Yaakov Avinu wanted to shout him down in order to lessen the possibility that hate would come from the brothers to him. Now why did Rashi have to say that? Because you might have thought at the beginning of your approach to the whole matter that Vayigash Oviv means that Yaakov Avinu shouted him down because he said he wanted to tell him that the Chalom was just not to be accepted. Had he called the Chalom was just a Chalom Yauf, a fleeting dream. And Vayigash Oviv might have implied that Yaakov Avinu was shouting him out that he shouldn't pay any attention to the dream. So therefore Rashi said, oh no, that is not the case. The reason why Yaakov Avinu shouted at him was he was looking for some way to play down the hatred which obviously be rearoused in a greater form from the brothers to Yosef. Not that he was attacking the Etzem dream itself. He wasn't belittling or shouting about the dream. He was trying some way or another to avoid an unpleasant result. But that already shows me that Yaakov Avinu was somehow or another, he was tuned in to this dream in a way that maybe he was even convinced that there was something basically true and very essential about it. So therefore, in the next thing that he said, Havoi Navoi, he said to Yosef in the form of a question, will then I and your mother come to bow down to you? And therefore Rashi says that he meant to say to Yosef with that, behold, your mother has already died. Because who was Yosef's mother? Rachel Imeinu, and she already passed away. It's already told about her passing in Parsha Vayisla, in the last week's Parsha. So she's already no longer amongst the living, as you might say. And therefore Yaakov says to Yosef, he said, Gibukuk, your mother's already not here. However, says Rashi, he didn't know Shadvarim Magim Lebilho. He didn't realize that when the Chalom spoke about Imercha, about your mother, meaning that the Yoreach for sure meant Yosef's mother, really the Chalom meant Bilhah. Now Bilhah was Rachel's servant girl that was given to Yaakov Avinu on the part of Rachel. And so she had certain children, but not Yosef. Yosef was the son of Rachel in effect. However, how can you call Bilhah his mother? Because she brought him up. We're going to learn in the Parsha. Well, we learned in last week's Parsha that Rachel passed away at the very giving birth of Benjamin, which was only a year or so after she'd had Yosef, which means that who actually brought up Yosef? Mistama, it was Bilhah. She brought Yosef up. And ever says Rashi, on that basis she be considered his mother, because she had to call it, she brought him up. She would have brought him up just like his mother. Rashi, so it's put in brackets that's a quote from the Bereshis Rabbah. Now that's the Medrash called the Bereshis Rabbah. We'll soon see in a minute why that's important. Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mikan. However, our Rabbi Seinu means the Chochmei HaGemara, or it could mean sometimes the Chochmei HaMedrash, but it means our sages. They learn from here She'ein Cholim B'loi Dvarim that there's no such thing as a dream without something that doesn't quite get together. Dvarim B'teilim means something that doesn't work out exactly the way you would want it to. That's what it means here. Because sometimes Dvarim B'teilim can mean just empty talk. It's hard to imagine that anybody would suspect that a Chalom of this stage had himself empty talk, Dvarim B'teilim. No, Loshen Devarim B'Teilim implies something that's not going to come true, or something that's not able to become true. Yeah, therefore it's like a dover, it's potil. It's there, but it's not really there. So it comes along our sages, and they learn from this whole thing. Now, what whole thing we don't quite know yet, but they learn from this whole thing that there's no such thing as a dream without Dvarim B'Teilim. In every dream, even a good dream, meaning a dream which is going to be accurate, there's always part of the dream which doesn't actually come about accurately. Let's learn it that way. So Azil to Shaila, where did they learn this from? Who is Rabbi Seinu? We just said that up to now we've been quoting from the Medrash Rabbah. So if this was also in the Medrash Rabbah, Rashi could just continue on. Why did he need to say Rabbi Seinu? So Rabbi Seinu is really the Gemara. That's a Gemara, Masechta Brachas, right at the end of the Masechta, Daf Nun Hey. There's a whole big arishas over there in the Gemara about dreams. About all sorts of different dreams. If you dream this, what it's a sign of. You dream something else. A whole big long discussion in the Gemara about dream. So over there, the Gemara says that Ein Cholim B'Loi Dvarim B'Teilim. No such thing as a dream without something that's a little bit inaccurate. And then it says, where do we know it from? And it brings this Indian here, when they get to the dream of the Shemesh and the Oreach, and Yaakov Avinu's reaction to it. Or maybe it doesn't. And that's of interest, because the Gemara learns it from one part of the Pasuk, or from one Pasuk, and Rashi seems to learn it from another part of the Pasuk. We'll see, mention that in a minute. However, now we know that. V'Yaakov, what's with Yaakov Avinu? Nishkavin lohichi adova mileiv bono. However, Yaakov Avinu, when he said this out to them, and he said to Yosef, am I then going to come with your mother and bow down? Yaakov Avinu wasn't meaning to actually question the Cholim, no, he had a strategy in mind, Yaakov Avinu. He wanted, by saying, your mother's already dead, and remember, since your mother's already dead, that's not going to be accurate, and therefore the column's not accurate, and therefore with that here we'll play their brothers down, and they won't have what to worry about, and they'll say, oh, the whole thing was just a fleeting dream, it's not a real dream, we don't have to worry, and therefore Yaakov Avinu said what he said. So to Shaila, what is Yaakov Avinu really doing? What does he really hold Yaakov Avinu? So if we say that Yaakov Avinu said it only in order to be moitzi adova milei bono, he said that what he said in order to make them think that the whole thing was botel, then maybe Yaakov Avinu himself didn't think the thing was botel at all, and maybe Yaakov Avinu wasn't disturbed by the fact that he knew that part of the dream wouldn't be able to come true, because he thought that it meant Rachel, and Rachel is already not alive. Oh, but Rashi said, it doesn't really mean Rachel, it really means Bilo, and Yaakov Avinu didn't know that. He didn't chap that. Yaakov Avinu didn't realize that it's referring to Bilo. So we're dancing here on all sorts of chasans. On the one hand, Yaakov Avinu is a Merkava Chelakus Yaakov Avinu. Always hein a Merkava, and when the dream which was sent by the Avish meant a certain thing, Yaakov Avinu didn't chap that. He didn't know it meant Billah. He thought it meant Rachel. Right? Comes along the Gemara and he always says, from that we learn that Ein Cholim B'Loi Dvarim B'Teilim. And then comes along Rashi and he says over here, but Yaakov Avinu said that only in order to be, maybe not only, but he said it in order to be moitzim leiv abonim, which would tend to imply that maybe Yaakov Avinu did believe the whole thing, but he only said it that way in order to be moitzi milei bona. So if we'll say that really Yaakov Avinu did believe the whole Cholim, even though he didn't know that it was really referring to Bilah, and he thought it was referring to Rachel, and Yaakov did believe the whole Cholim. As far as he was concerned, he was okay with the Cholim Yaakov. What did he say in a scorning sort of way? Your mother's already died, and my mother, just like that part of it's bottled, the whole Cholim is bottled. He was saying that only for the sake of the children. Like Rashi started, he wanted to get rid of the sinner of a really young Avinu himself. He may be okay with the Cholim. He might be alright with it. And the only reason he said those things out was in order to stop the hate at the brothers. Although he didn't know what the dream really meant, yet nonetheless he was okay, Yaakov. And not only that, his way of thinking of it is that right from the beginning there's something faulty here, because it's referring to Rachel, and Rachel's not alive anymore. Nonetheless, Yaakov would appear to be all right with the dream. So therefore, maybe that's what Rashi means when he says, Mikan, from here our sages learn that you can have a cholim, bedvarim, betelim, and that's perfectly alright. The cholim can be a perfectly kosher a cholim, and a good cholim, and a cholim that's going to come about. It just so happens that there might be one part of it which is not going to come about, and that's the pshat devarim, betelim. And remember, that doesn't matter. The cholim can still be a good cholim. In other words, then the pshat would be that our sages learned from Yaakov. The pshat would be Mikan Lomdu. Here they learned, Rabbi Seinu Lomdu, Mikan would mean from Yaakov. Because on the one hand, Yaakov didn't know much. He didn't know the dream we were referring to Bilah. And he thought it was referring to Rachel. Remember, right from the very beginning, Yaakov could have had a kasher, and he did. He saw but Rachel is no longer and yet nonetheless he was okay with the dream, Yaakov. He was perfectly alright. So our sages say, you see, Mikan Lomdim Ein Cholim B'Loi Dvarim B'Tei. What there would be that Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mikan. Now it's well known when Rashi says that, the Rashi means only from here we know that particular. Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mikan. So the pshat is, what does kan mean? We learned here, according to that way of understanding it, and I'm not completely ruling out that way of understanding it, that's a way of understanding it, where when we say mikan, we mean from Yaakov, we mean from his mind. Yaakov had a kasha on the cholim, but nonetheless that's no problem. As far as he's concerned, that's no problem. Why? Because Yaakov knows that ain't cholim b'loi dvarim b'teilim. Why did he say it in the way that he said it to the sons? Mikan shekola cholim botel. That was only in order to stop the sinner and to challenge the sons. In other words, that they would be satisfied with that, and maybe they would cool down like Abi Yoyim. So the Fiza Ekumtois, do we have to say that Yaakov Avinu had a key that their sons didn't have? In other words, that Yaakov Avinu, he knew, or he was okay with the fact that there'll be something which is not going to be kept in the Chalom. However, the sons didn't know that. And once he told them that in order to shake them up and to stop them being angry, that they were okay with that. I mean, they weren't really in the end, because they hated Yosef very poorly for all sorts of reasons. But at least that was Yaakov Avinu's intention. So, then, Mikan means that our sages learned from Yaakov Avinu. So we learned from Yaakov himself. So I thought the Shaila, how come Yaakov Avinu knew that? How come he knew that? And Yosef also obviously knew it, because Yosef was very happy with the dream. Yosef was convinced the whole time that the dreams were going to come true, as is known. He and Yosef, they knew, over the Shvatim, they didn't know. And another thing we see, that Yaakov, despite the fact that he knew this, he didn't know that the Cholim was referring really to Bilhah. We have to work out what's going on around here. Yaakov is quite happy with the Cholim, but according to the beginning of Rashi, that's not really the emphasis interpretation of the Cholam either, because the Amos interpretation isn't really referring to Bilhah, and Yaakov didn't know that himself. So it comes later, some things he did know Yaakov, other things he didn't. What he did know, he was quite happy. What he didn't know, didn't busy him at that particular moment. None of us come together, the Gemara learned out what it learns out. And particularly, that the plot thickens that if you look up the Gemara and set the brachas, the way we have it in our Gemara, then the Gemara learns from another part of the pasuk. The Gemara doesn't learn from this whole thing. It just says exactly what Yaakov says. It says, Minayin, where do we know that ain't cholam below dvarim b'teilim? So the Gemara Minayin, it said that Hashem is b'yoreach, v'chad mishtachavim li, Hashem is yoreach is Yaakov v'ishtoi, and ishtoi lo yoyes b'oises man. The Gemara, that Rachel was already dead at that time. Malamet she'ein cholim below dvarim b'teilim. And the Gemara just learns it from nowhere. There's still pasuk itself, not mentioning below the whole Inyan. What the Fizek knows is that our Gemara doesn't learn like the Medrash Rabbah that really was referring to below. It just was referring to just learning the pasuk very innocently, that the thing did become true, even though something wasn't really 100% right in the Cholim. It doesn't have to do with Yaakov Avinu. Mishnah or Yaakov Avinu. I state in the Gemara. However, Rashi learns it on the pasuk, on the part of the pasuk where Yaakov Avinu is already talking, and he's saying, "Can this really happen? Yeah, look, your mother's already dead," but he doesn't really mean that, but he does. You know? He meant it for the sake of the Shvatim. So I was trying to work out where did Rashi get this Mikan business, because he's obviously referring to the Gemara and the brothers, but he brings it in another thing, in another part of the pasuk, and in another way to what the Gemara does. And therefore, to my great relief, I looked up in the Marshua over there, and the Marshua, he says that there's another Gilsa in the Yalkut where they learn it from this pasuk. The Gemara learns it from this pasuk. Hovoi Novoi, and not from just the etzem fact that he had a dream about the Shemesh v'Yoreh. In other words, that they learn it into Yaakov Avinu's words. And I looked up in the Ein Yankiv, and the Ein Yankiv is a likud of the Gemara, a very early likud in the time of the early Rishonim, from all the Gemaras that deal with the Agaditas, and there he brings the Gilsa Malchatchila, Hovoi Novoi, he learns it in Yaakov Avinu's words, not in the stam statement of the Torah. So therefore Rashi's got a lot to base himself on, that our sages really learn from what Yaakov Avinu said. And another comment is that we're learning directly from Yaakov Avinu, not just stam, there was such a thing that happened. Another comment is that Yaakov Avinu is the one who's playing the whole thing here. He's on the one hand saying, Rachel's already not here. Not the Gemara is just leaving you to assume that, but Yaakov Avinu is working on that fact that Rachel Avinu is already dead, and yet nonetheless he doesn't seem to have any problem with the ganze Chalom. It seems to him alright. Oh, said the Gemara, Mikan, from here you can understand that do it. So some people say, okay, why didn't his sons? Why didn't they know that? Why didn't they not take his bluff, as you might say, Yaakov Avinu? He shook him with this bluff. Why didn't they just say, oh yeah, wait a minute, maybe that doesn't mean... Why were they satisfied with that? Well, whether they should know what Yaakov Avinu knows. And if you look carefully back earlier when Yosef was born, it's written that Yaakov really loved Yosef. Why did he love Yosef? Because Ben Zekunim Hulei. He was a son of the old age. Yeah? He was a son of the old age. So Rashi comes along over there and give a clue what Rashi says. Rashi says that Ben Zekunim means Bar Chachim. He was a wise son, very wise son. And he teaches the Targum Onkelos, but Targum Onkelos teaches Zekunim meaning Chochmah. And he says Anybody remember what? See if you guys remember anything from your chittas. Rashi says immediately that Yaakov Avinu taught Yosef everything he learned in the house of Shem Eber. Which means that we've already been told that Yaakov Avinu learned Torah for 14 years straight. And he never slept night and day with the whole. You guys are familiar with the answer. Arifas and Rashi at the end of Parsha told it that Yaakov Avinu never messed around. He was always in Seder. Even if there'd been a Farbrengen the night before, he was in Seder the next day. Yeah, he learned that he could 14 years straight. So Yaakov Avinu learned Kol HaTorah Kula that was then known, and he gave it over to Yosef. And comes again to Maharal Prague, and he says a very amazing thing. He says that this whole in a cholim she'ein by dvarim b'teilim. I'm sorry, a cholim she'ein by dvarim b'teilim doesn't necessarily mevatel the cholim, and on the contrary, you can't really have a cholim without some type of dvarim b'teilim. Or that's the thing you have to have b'Kabbalah. You don't know that. Somehow or another you have to be told that. And he said, like the majority of the words of our sages, the words of our sages are all divrei Kabbalah. They're all things that they receive. Yes, it's written in the Gemara that Reb Pliny dash and this and this from this and this passage. So it's well known, the famous beer in the Rishonim about that. It's not attached that if it hadn't been for that deal in the passage, they would never have known that Inyan. No, they knew that Inyan anyway, but Kabbalah from Moshe Rabbeinu. And from previous generation, and everything our sages say is called Divrei Kabbalah, but they knew it and they had it received. The whole Inyan that the Gemara and the other discussions in the Beis HaMedrash included a whole task on the part of our sages to find pesukim to back up things that they knew were the case. And therefore it was a great Inyan on their part to find a pasuk which would back that idea or that particular principle, that would back it to the hill. And there's a famous beer in the Chaim HaKadosh in Parashat Tazria, Barichas, where he's mad with that Inyan, Barichas Gedolah, which I kind of walking Laharis was there. Edifa, Lafisa, Yaakov Avinu knew Kabbalah Devach. He knew that was the material. Why? Because he'd learned at Eitzel Shem Eber. You have to know it's Azak Kabbalah. Can't really know it Al Pi Sfara and Al Pi reasoning. Doesn't make any sense. The whole Chalom doesn't make any sense. Chalom is Beklava, strange in Yonim. And if that's not Al Pi Sfara, then it's a Divrei Kabbalah. So it's Rashi's already told us that Yaakov Avinu learned from Shem Eber. What did he do? He gave it all over to Yosef. Maybe he gave over certain in Yonim also to the Shvatim. It would appear that not the way he did to Yosef. And if Yosef also wasn't at all disturbed by the fact that at Shashayla, who is the Uriah? At Shashayla, who is it? Maybe it could be interpreted as Rachel, and then you'll say, well, Yesh can't devote but Yosef wasn't at all Nizos. Okay, he learned from Yaakov Avinu what these are. That's what the Maharal in the Prague time. If Yaakov was such a gewaldige, knowledgeable man and these sort of inyanim, then why didn't he just know that Bilah was really the one meant by Imer? Why did he get involved in the ganze inyan? With Rachel, why didn't he just say Bilah was meant? So he said after them, Nishloken Kabbalah, B'divrei Chazal, that's a svara. To say either it means Bilah or it doesn't. That's a svara. And in a svara, Yaakov Avinu is a great man, but the Shvatim are also a great man. Lav Davke, that everybody has to light on exactly the same idea, be convinced about it. The only way you can know is if you like the Medrash Rabbah, which, like the famous story of Reb Zushia, what they asked, how come that he knew a certain Indian, and so the Maggid of Mezeritz, he knew it, whether Yerushalmi knew it from. You guys are not familiar with I see you've all become so Van Moichen that you can't even take a joke. Well, it's a pretty holy joke, but I mean, it is interesting. That the Magen Mezerit said about Rabbi Zusha that he knew that thing from exactly the same area, or from the same source as the Yerushalmi. Anyway, it's whatever. Lafisa come to us that you might say, well, Yaakov, he should have known what the Bereshis Rabbah knew it from. Lav Davka, always that has to be the case. As they said to Maral Mipra, over in Ainim, which is Mamish Divrei Kabbalah, a Cholim, who knows anything about a Cholim? And in a Cholim Guver, there's Dvarim B'Teilim, and yet nonetheless that's not Mavatal, the Etzem Emes of the Cholim. That's a Divrei Kabbalah. That's a from Limud. In Limud, Yaakov Avinu and Yosef knew better than anybody else. And the far, they knew, and the Shvatim Lav Davka that they knew. Hij is ook de Marami vraag. Was Lefise, it comes out that really we're learning Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mikan, they learned from here, meaning Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu's whole reaction to this Indian and to the whole Zach, Kamoishu. But Lefise, Rashi should have said Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mi Yankiv, or Lomdu Mi Masher Yankiv Yoda, or it was. If the whole limud was from Yaakov. Alafeda, when we say that the Rabbi Seinu Lomdu Mikan, then we mean from the Etzem Maisa, from the Etzem Sipur, Shehoya, then our sages learned from that there's such a thing, and therefore they learned, says Rashi, She'ein cholim b'lei dvarim b'terah. Not that there can be dvarim b'terah, but don't worry. But they learned that ein cholim b'lei dvarim b'terah. They learned from here a klal that there's no such thing as a cholim b'lei dvarim b'terah. Now we have to say that we're talking about the second type of cholim that we mentioned, not a nevuah, because in a nevuah you can't say they nevuah b'lei dvarim b'terah. Of a word, already a cholim of certain factors, and those factors have got to be interpreted. Like we saw, that was the second Indian in Chalimes. We're going to reach an interpretation, but again, to what did those things actually mean? Then in a Zamin Zach, there can be, and there has to be almost, Dvarim B'Teilim. Yeah, well, all of a sudden they come along and say, Lomdu Mikam. We have to say that it's not just that we learn from Yaakov Avinu and the way he reacted to it. Now, from the Etzem situation, the Marshur over there in Masechta Brachas, he tied as an interesting thing. He said that Lomdu Mikan is mashma, that the sages could only learn that out once it already happened. How are they supposed to know? Eichem you do. And once it already happened, and we know that eventually it did happen, and we know what happened from it, etc., etc. And if our sages were able to learn from that, ain't cholim b'dvarim b'teilim. Over here we're talking before it happened. Rashi is going on in the words of the Rebbe Melech Moshe. Rashi's talking to guys like ourselves here, Ben Chomish the Mikra, we're very simple little guys, we don't really know anything yet. We haven't really learnt any further yet. So, we don't know what's going to have to do with, and that later they did bow down. That's all later on, way over in a few parshas from now, that the whole thing actually eventuated and eventualized. Yet, nonetheless, Lomdu Mikan, we have to say that the very fact that Yaakov Avinu only said what he said, and that's not written, not in Gemara, not in the Medrash. That's Rashi's own interpretation. Rashi said, what was Yaakov Avinu B'klal saying anything here for? He could have just said to Yosef, listen here, you watch out, don't talk about this, and he could have, Yosef in some other way, and that would have made the Shvatim feel a bit better. Why did he have to talk in the cholim? He had to say things in the cholim to try and quieten Yosef down, and at the same time make the Shvatim feel better. Is it a siman that even though Yaakov Avinu had a kashia, even though And the Metzias has a kasha. The very fact that we're talking about Yaakov Avinu and his wife, that we know that Yaakov Avinu's wife is no longer behind. I mean, the mother of Yosef, right? Leah was still alive. Of Rachel, everybody knows that she's dead. And that's a davar mafrusam. It's written clearly in the parsha with the ganze, in last week's parsha with the ganze arichas beneged to Rachel's passing. Everybody knows she's not alive. In Mamila, where in the Indian that it's written that we're going to come on Niviye Imelcha, that Yaakov Avinu geschrien, how's it going to happen? That there's like a situation which is mafrusam, that something's wrong with this whole cholim. If that is in effect the interpretation, then something's not right. And yet, nonetheless, nobody seems to be worried by that particular point who really believe in things that are going on. Not Yosef and not Yaakov. From the very fact that Yaakov Avinu wasn't at all troubled, not the fact that he learned it to Hashem Vayigash, not that we learned it from Yaakov Avinu. No, we learned from the very event that happened that Yaakov Avinu was okay. He heard that and he still went ahead and he believed that the cholim was going to happen. How do we know that? So some people say you only know it from the coming Rashi. From Oviv, Shovi, and Sadova, that Rashi says clearly Yaakov Avinu was waiting for it to happen. Oh, we don't need that either, because the Ben Chomish Lamikah didn't get to that pasuk yet either. So how do we know that Yaakov Avinu was perfectly happy? Because Rashi says he didn't say anything only to be moitzim min libam shel b'neiim, shel rabbanim. He only said what he said in order to shvach up the shvatim, to make them not angry. But he himself believed the whole thing. He didn't say anything, Yaakov Avinu, only in order to attack the sons, that they shouldn't get the wrong idea. As far as he was concerned then, if he always said what he said, for their sake, it's assuming that really there's no problem with the Gansarin. Ain't shum baya be'etzem adova. Nit by Yosef, nit by Yaakov Avinu, not really, for that matter, by anybody. He only said it in a way that he didn't really mean it in order to try and make the Shvatim calm down, hoping that they wouldn't happen in Kashir. And so why did they have Kashirs? Because they were worried, they were angry. This is well known that somebody who's angry and somebody who's bekapeda and with the ganze masse, then he doesn't work and function outside of his attack. And this is what we see in the whole parsha, that they were angry and upset, and therefore they came to certain dvarim which al derech harovah they would never have come to. Therefore, come to us that Yaakov Avinu was perfectly all right. Everybody was perfectly all right. The Shvatim were also mitzadei zetam they didn't have, and Yaakov Avinu was fortunate he got away with it because he said it only in order to lohitzim libam. So therefore, Rashi said mikam from the very Maisa itself. Believe that Yaakov Avinu learned that he had per Kabbalah like the Maharal Miprak said. Now, mamish from the etzem sipur alone, you can see that ein chalom b'loi dvarim b'teilim. So you might say, well, why ein chalom b'loi dvarim b'teilim? Why is every chalom that's not a nevuah, why does it have to be that way? Lama kulam. So it can be up even because if this was a very special case, then maybe Yaakov Avinu would have to say this is a special case. And maybe it wouldn't have been so obvious to him that everything was all right. And therefore Rashi says, notice a klal as I mean. And therefore everybody was all right, and there was a certain sakona in talking to the Shvatim. Maybe they would also chap up a mitzadei and mazel, they didn't. And they didn't chap. Of anybody who really thought about it carefully, and Rashi says that we learn it from the very etzem of the thing that Yaakov Avinu believed in the ganze cholim. Which means that Yaakov Avinu, with all of his brilliance, and he was the greatest, according to most opinions, he was the greatest of the three fathers with the whole Riechus Hayine. Yaakov Avinu, with the pashtas, with the tmimas, he heard a chalom from Yosef, And even though he had Kashia, Rachel is not around, and he didn't know that really it meant Bilha, but the guns to do it. Yaakov was perfectly happy. He said, oh, yours. This is it. This is going to be. The sons are really going to get angry. They're going to get there. And he said out something which made it sound as if he didn't believe for the sake of a day. He did believe it, yeah. The song you know, Mitapashta. We see that's a very fascinating Indian that Yaakov Avinu was makabel the whole thing, even though he had a kashif bedova, so therefore he called him below dvorim the taif. Very interesting Indian. Amamel kum tois lafi said that's a cloud. I mean, however, ask yourself the shaila. Why, if Yaakov Avinu didn't know about Bilo, he didn't know that really meant Bilo, we haven't dealt with that yet, because the Medrash Rabbah says that Paklal is no problem. the whole column was 100% okay, according to the Medrash Rabbah. The whole thing is according to the Gemara, this whole problem. Yaakov Avinu, he was perfectly okay. State in the Medrash over there, according to another opinion, an amazing thing. That's really an amazing thing. When I saw it, my eyes jumped out. A state taught in the Medrash, how come Yaakov Avinu, this is according to one opinion in the Medrash, says the opinion, how come Yaakov Avinu just accepted Pshitas, the whole column, and he didn't have any problems. And the Medrash doesn't hold from this whole Indian column below Dorim. That doesn't mention the Baklau. So the Medrash says, how come Yaakov Avinu was happy? So it says that Yaakov Avinu was positive that there was going to be Tchias HaMeisim any time. I stated that. He was positive that there's going to be Tchias HaMeisim any time, and therefore he knew, he was quite happy with the fact that Rachel was going to stand up any minute, and if Rachel would be able to be together with him when the Cholim would be actually Makuya. And Vanivi Merchamet Rachel Avinu, according to that opinion. The other opinion holds it was Bila, and Rashi brings Dafka that opinion. That's probably worse, because Rashi doesn't like it. Pirush HaPshat, he doesn't like it mixed up with, with Tchias HaMeisim. Rashi feels that's a little bit outside together. The Pshat, Rashi doesn't bring it. As they state in the Medrash that Yaakov Avinu was positive that there's going to be Tchias HaMeisim, and at Kedikach, there's an opinion brought down over there, one of the before Sha'amirad, an opinion is brought down that Yaakov Avinu had a whole cheshbon bedor. And he was of the opinion that the Yidden were going to go down to Mitzrayim, and that would be the last history of the world, that would be the last Golas, and Yetzias Mitzrayim, that would already be the Emes of Geula, and there wouldn't be any other Golas or Geula after Yetzias Mitzrayim. And how long was it between the brisbane of Asorim and Yetzias Mitzrayim? 210 yards. And it's brought down in the Zohar Cottage that from the Geula Shlema, according to one opinion, that from the Geula Shlema till Tchias HaMeisim, 210 years. I stated the Zohar. So this Meforish, he says that Yaakov Avinu knew about that, and he was cocking that any time there's going to be Tchias HaMeisim, because the Yidden are on their way down to Mitzrayim, and there's going to be Yetzias Mitzrayim before 210 years. There's going to have to be Tchias HaMeisim immediately. Yetzias Mitzrayim will get moving. And he was of the opinion that certain people are going to stand up earlier, and that's exactly what the Rebbe brings, that certain people are going to get up earlier. And that's what the great tzaddikim, Rachel Imenu Zicha, one of the great tzaddikim, says, the Zicha, she's going to get up even before. If remember, Yaakov Avinu wasn't concerned, he believed that Ein Achanam, that be Tchias HaMeisim. They stayed in the middle. And even better, even more than that, it's written that the very fact that Yosef said that the Shemesh v'Yoreh are going to come and bow down to him, well, that made him the balabas over the Shemesh. And therefore, Yeshua, he's one of the grandsons of Yosef. You know that Yeshua, he's one of the grandsons of Yosef. He comes from Shevet Ephraim. And what did he do? Yeshua? He goes a bunch on him. Beishlav, and he stopped the Shemesh. He said, Shemesh begiving Doim, and the Shemesh had to stop. So it's written in the Medrash that he said, listen, Shemesh, you're already my Eved, because I already said my father and my mother are going to come bow down to me. So my father is the Shemesh, and he's already bowed down to me. So he said, you're under my you're under my, how do you call it, control. In the future, if one of my Enoch tells you what to do, you must be very sure to do it immediately. We see all sorts of unbelievable things were happening, and Yosef and Yankov, they were mamish verkocht in big inyonim. Nicht da. They weren't just walking around, draining a cup with all the local inyonim and all the klein kefische masala. They were verkocht in Kriyas HaMeizim and the Shem, not with all inyonim. And in Emerson, it's Mefurish and Tzidot, become a Mekayim that Yaakov Avinu was a greater Meshachis. And Yaakov Avinu, he said the whole time, we want Mashiach now, and he said, we're not waiting for any longer. No, when I finished in Beis Lavan, that's already the Gilu, which is Roi Liyos Mashiach. And he brings in Ayin Beit. The Rebbe zot in the first Kelik Ayin Beit, and that's what he sent to Esav, because he thought that Esav, being a son of Yitzchak, he's also been doing something for these 22 years. He hasn't been sitting around idle. And then all of a sudden he heard that never Rachmanin in clan Esav had yet been sitting idle. And therefore he realized it was going to take time, and he got a tremendous shock, Yaakov. He didn't realize they'd do anything. And then all of a sudden he had a son called Yosef. He realized he's got Yosef. And all of a sudden he said, oh, with Yosef I can bring the Geula. And he tried all over again. Now this state in Amayim from the Rebbe Nishmatziyah, in Tofrei Shayin Allah. And Amel, if he's there come to us, that Yaakov Avinu was verkocht in the whole Enoch of the Geula slavery. So you might say, well, that sounds all very nice. It's a Mefurish Asicha from the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. And the Rebbe's got a whole thing that Rashi says in Pasha V'Yichi, that before he passed away, Yaakov Avinu wanted to rebuild the gates. He called all the sons together, and all of a sudden, the Eivster didn't allow him to do it. But he says, Bikish Yaakov Legales SHK. He wanted to reveal when Mashiach is coming, and the Rebbe's got a whole beer over there that he really believed that Yetzias Mitzrayim was going to be the Geula Shleima. Pete is even there Mefurish on the Medrash brings down. Lefizeh Yaakov Avinu was a gewaldige Meshachit. He saw at the end of days, doesn't have to wait till who knows in history. No, at the end of days, and that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Vav, right at the beginning, that the Tachlis of the whole Bria is Yemosha Mashiach at Kriyas HaMeizim. If Yaakov Avinu said, what do we have to wait around for 5,000 or 6,000 years and to the Tachlis of the whole Bria? That's only going to be a Golos, a Kopterinish. Who needs that? Let's make it right now. And it's well known that Moshe Rabbeinu was in a similar mood, because Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to go over, and the Mittler Rebbe brings it. The Mittler Rebbe brings it at the beginning of one of his famous Maimonim, what's it called, the Maimon HaChinuch. The Mittler Rebbe brings to it that the Ilu Moshe Rabbeinu would have gone over in Eretz Yisrael, then the Beis HaMikdash would never have been destroyed. Vayesh Lema, that Kavanasa is that there would never been a Golet. And under it there would have been the Infa. Yemosha Mashiach at Kriyas HaMeizim, because the Alter Rebbe doesn't mince his words. And if the Alter Rebbe said that's the Tachlis HaBriya, that's the Tachlis of the Ganze Briya. And so these great peoples, they said, why do we have to wait? And that's the Infa. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. The pshat is that normal human beings can't understand. Why should they have to wait? It's only a tremendous bilbul, and the more the Goddess goes ahead, the less it makes any heck of a sense whatsoever. It's never made any sense. But the further the Golus goes, the more fadrate everything becomes. And remember, these great personalities, and the latest and most consummate of all the Yaakov and all the Yosef Tzaddiks is the Rebbe, Melech HaMashiach, and he says, what on earth are we waiting for? There's nothing what to wait for anymore. Hakel Mushlam, everything's been finished. I feel a shitazu that you have to wait. Alright, so you have to wait these 5,000 years. We've already waited, and we've already done it, and we had to do it. What are we waiting around for? And that was Yaakov Avinu. And the Farah, Yaakov Avinu, he was a pashtus dikamen Yaakov. And therefore, he knew he didn't have any problems with the whole Indian. Had to go, Rachel Imenu would just get up, because Lefi that shit in the Medrash, even though that's not necessarily the pshat in Rashi, Al Derech HaDrush, for sure it can make good sense, that Yaakov Avinu had no kashiyas. He himself was perfectly happy with the whole thing, even though Rachel Imenu wasn't there, but because he believed in the field so amazing, take it from Yad Mama. We'll shake ourselves out that there'll actually be a kiyum with us. Rachel will be with us below. Mama is dove and nifla. Auch upon him, and we come back to Rashi, and we see that Yaakov Avinu was convinced that everything's all right, even though maybe one prat is not going to be good. Ein cholim b'lei dvarim b'teilim. That's the Matthias. That's the Inyan. We'll soon talk about that in a second. However, why is it that Rashi says that later we have to say that really the truth is that the Cholim was referring to Bilho, and Yaakov didn't know about that. I mean, it's like Kilo having your cake and eat it too. On the one hand, Rashi builds a big case that Yaakov knew there was such a thing as a Cholim had to have Devarim B'Teilim, and yet on the other hand, he says really you don't really need that, because below the Cholim was Emet. I mean, why do you need to hold both ends of the why do you need to hold both ends of the stick? L'chayra, we could say that Yaakov knew that it was referring to Bilah. Why did he say the whole business with Rachel was Lohitzim mi? Rashi himself's got a good terror. Rashi said he said it in order Lohitzim mi. Mileiv ha-shvatim, mileiv bonim. You can hold that really is referring to Bilah, but what you said was in order to Lohitzim mileiv shalash-shvatim. But to time good. And the Rebbe Eliyahu Mizrahi, the famous early period commentator on Rashi, he asked that kashya. And he says, what does Rashi need to say that Yaakov didn't know it was referring to Bilho? So we could say two inyonim bazeh. One thing we could say, and that's another big cloud, and that is that a great person like Yaakov Avinu, and the fact that he's a Merkova, so Elakus, that Yaakov Avinu would never say something which he himself doesn't know. In other words, which is a sheker, or it's even got a reach, shel sheker, or a reach shel, that he called lahatis is abriyos, okay, if he himself didn't hold by the by. And if he holds by the by and he knows that yesh MS, just that Yena may not be able to be makabel that, and that's got a certain usage for regazeh, then einachanami. But to use the situation, but derech hasheker, or but derech saying a thing you don't hold the cloud to be the case, Yaakov Avinu would never do that. Yaakov Avinu would not use a situation that he himself didn't hold by, and he did, or an Inyan or a Svara that he didn't hold by B'yem Islamita in order to hatis stamp somebody for the usageness of a situation. And if he knew that really it was referring to Bilho, and really the whole column was Besed Gomo, why did he have to come saying to them, oh, it's really referring to Rochav, and Rochav's not here, you see, doesn't do. In other words, then he would have been saying a thing which he himself doesn't know. It doesn't say no Dor SHK Ki'ilu. Mashen, according to our pshat, he does really hold. He doesn't know about Bila, and he holds that it is a bit of a mistake, but he's perfectly happy with that. All he said to the Shvatim was what is really the truth, but he did it in such a way that they wouldn't be able to recover the truth. Or not that he was fooling them, or not that he was saying a Dor SHK. He just hoped that at that particular moment they would be recovered that in a way that they wouldn't be angry. Now that's number one. Number two, we could say the Rebbe Melech Mashiach, with his unbelievable pincer eye, the Rebbe Melech Mashiach brings down the following. The Ramban, he's got a kasha on Rashi, and he says that Bilha, at the time that they bowed down to Yosef, the Bilha was no longer alive. At the time of the Ramban. And he's got rise from certain Pesukim, but it's not really written clearly in the Pesukim Bilha had already died. And yet Rashi is not mispoken that, and neither is a Medrash Rabbah, and they say no, that Bilha was alive, and really it's referring to who's going to bow down, it's going to be Bilha. And she was the one who actually bowed down to Yosef, not Rochel. And the Rebbe, if you look in the Targum Yonason, I suppose one of these sort of pencil things that you have to have almost computer type eye to notice it. In the Targum Yonason in Parsha Vayigash, right near the end of everything, it's written that after Yaakov Avinu was buried, the Shvatim got worried, and they were anxious. Now maybe the Yaakov Avinu is not around. Yosef will really take revenge. You remember the story at the end of the age. So it's written that they sent people to talk with Yosef, that he shouldn't want to take revenge. So over there in the Targum Yonason, it's written that they sent to Bilha Ula. They sent to Bilha and to Yosef. At least they took in the Targum Yonason. You're not assuming that a long time after it had already been the bowing down, which was at the beginning of the whole coming to Mitzrayim, Bilha was still alive, because they sent to Bilha and to Yosef. I remember the Targum Yonason is written by Rabbi Yonason ben Zebul. He was a Tana, and an early Tana into the bargain. If I remember, called Dvarav Divrei Kabbalah, and he says that Bilha was still alive after the Ganzer Masha. And if that's Rashi knew that, and he didn't want to learn like the Ramban that Bilha was no longer alive. Because Yesh Kabbalah him that that's not the case. And the Ramban doesn't have a really strong case below him. He's only got a certain diuk in Psukim, but it's not clear that Bilha died. Statement does anywhere. Lo katuv davar kazeh. If he's ever that Rashi didn't want to learn as I'm in so young that Bilha wouldn't be alive when that happened. And therefore she was alive. And therefore really the whole thing is okay. The Ganzer Chalom is Beseder, and it's referring to Bilha, and just that Yaakov Avinu didn't know that. Like we said earlier, he's not mechuyev to know things which are totally purely b'metzias. Muss das nicht wissen. Lefi Rashi. And the farm is that really Bilha was still alive, and remember the whole column is really Beseder. And really it's a very interesting thing in simple Svara to say that a woman that brought a guy up all of his life, and mom looked after him, what they're going to do is that she was considered his mother. I mean nowadays, people call their stepmothers and everything, they call them mothers. I mean this is a daughter. A Bafrat, where she actually brought him up from when he was a Tinoik Ben Shona, Ben Porus Mishon. And therefore, says Rashi, Mitat Kol HaTamim Ha'ilu, it's more mustava to learn that Bilha did actually bow down together with Yaakov. Was Lefizeh Kumtais that according to the Medrash Rabbah, everything's okay. It really meant Bilha Melachatchila. There's no kashias. But he holds in the middle of this whole amazing Michigan, the Gemara into it with Yaakov Avinu, the ganze Arichas Hayin that we've already learned. Over the feet, just the Medrash Rabbah li'atzmai, that we saw when I get to the Gemara, the Medrash Rabbah holds the whole thing just makes perfect sense. That everything was all right, Malachatchila. So ask yourself the Shaila, what does the Medrash Rabbah really hold? So the Taichi is that the Medrash Rabbah, we can say, and Rashi, Lefizeh, what he said about the whole Inyan was only to show us the tmimus of Yaakov Avinu. Ali Dezeh, we will cover this whole other cloud. Is we have to say that they learn that it depends who is cholaming the cholam also. So not only what sort of cholam it is, but it depends who is the cholam cholam, who is actually, they say, who is cholaming the cholam. If we take a person like Yosef, then we see that not only Yosef is a very unusual and tremendously gifted individual, but we see right from the very beginning that he is a Aish Miyuchad. He went out of his way and got himself into all sorts of difficulties and trouble to try and correct even people who were considered very elevated people. Dahainu, his brothers, right at the beginning of the parasha, he starts going to Yaakov Avinu with what's called not very pleasant reports about his brother. And if you look in the simple Lashon, the way Rashi quotes it, it seems to be pretty tough going. Yosef says all sorts of unpleasant things about his brother. So it's brought down in the Meforshe Rashi, and also in the famous Sikha of David Melech HaMashiach, that really Yosef had a different kavanah. It was very kind of mocking Laharik Bezer. In other words, that Yosef, right from the very beginning, Yosef wanted to elevate people. He wanted to bring them to their real shleimas, and he wanted to correct the whole world. He wanted to make the world a better place. And as soon as he gets down to Mitzrayim, he gets into the base Peitifah, he starts doing all sorts of good things, and people say, oh, what a gewaldige guy this is, etc., etc. And he gets into the prison, the same mass, and they're making the leader of the ganze prison, and the ganze do it, and then eventually Paris is Kaval, Ein Ish, Chochem V'Novin Kamoyu. There's no such man like this. And so Rashi brings over there, you will learn it during Chanukah, so in the Chittas for Chanukah, that he wanted to be mal all the Mitzrim years. He wanted to put all the Mitzrim through a meal. They all came running to Pari, and they said, listen here, this guy, he's going to put in charge of the whole country. He said, we're all going to mal ourselves. Pari said, what can I help you guys? He said, he's already been geyser on the Tavua. If you don't watch out, he'll be geyser on all of us if we die or something. Watch out for him. But nonetheless, we see that Yosef wanted to be mal the ganze Welt. In other words, he wanted to elevate everybody, that they should be higher and better, more pure, afilu Mitzrayim. But they were pretty hard going, the Mitzrayim. In other words, Yosef he's not mispoofing anybody. And he says, we got to elevate the ganze Mitzrayim. Pasha Kipshuta. And remember, Yosef went around working with everybody in the world that they should be better, more elevated, and they should be at least something like he was. He was a neshama from Pnimius Atzila. So therefore, Yosef is an amazing person. And right from the very beginning of the parsha, we see that Yosef is normal mensch, klal, and that's what Rashi says, that Yosef, Yaakov Avinu chose him to teach him everything he learned by Shemba Eiba. So everybody says, well, we don't need to learn everything from Shemba Eiba. We're supposed to be finishing early tonight with the guns to do us. Everybody's already worried. So I am also. Anyway, ask yourself to gewaltige Shaila, is him came, ein, like Paris said, ein Chochem V'Novin Kamoyu. That Yosef was the most wise and most wondrous person there was in the whole world. And based on that, the Bereshis Rabbah, the Medrash learns with a pshita that if Yosef cholim, ein b'zeh shum davar shebilti and that everything he cholims, even though it comes in the form of a cholim, it's not mamish nevuah kipshute. It's an inyan of different symbols which lead to different inyanim of ukrochim leima she'ein b'zeh dova she'ein oi emes lamite b'taklazem. And therefore the Medrash Rabbah says it was referring to Bilhah. Rashi holds that Bilhah was taken still alive, Nishvi the Ramban. And therefore Rashi says that that's taken the emes, v'ad kerikach that Yaakov Avinu lo yoda mizeh. That thing you inyan zeh, and Afu Pekena didn't disturb Yaakov Avinu. So that inyan is mitzad echad a slight criticism of Yaakov Avinu. Ve'ilo mitzad hasheni, that's an amazing praise that Yaakov Avinu was still patuach that it will become true. And favuez because Yosef said it. And that's how we see the amazing inyan of believing in the Rebbe of the generation. And that's the inyan that Yosef is called the Rebbe of all the Rebbe. And therefore it's written, Noihe Katzain Yosef. The whole Jewish people is called the flock of Yosef. And they state in Chassidus, and they state in Tehillim, and they state all over the place that the emes leader, and I could go into that parichas, but everybody's saying Admah, etc. I can't go into the whole region. I can bring you proofs that Yosef, a tzaddik, is the Rebbe of all the Rebbe. And therefore, we see that the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he was the last big throw before Melech HaMashiach, the Frierdiker Rebbe is called Yosef. And he's the inyan of Noah Katzain Yosef. And together with that, he's also called Yitzchak. What Yitzchak, the Mavur in Torah and Oid Habim Maimonim, that Yitzchak is the inyan of the Yosid Lava. Yitzchak is the father that we're all going to say when Mashiach will come, Kihu Avinu, the emes of father of all the fathers are going to be Yitzchak. And Yitzchak is Lashon Tchoik, Osali, Elokim, Lashon Tainug, that the Aves is going to have Givaldik Tainug from the Yidden Bisman HaGilui of Melech HaMoshiach, even more than he has now. And on the contrary, the Rebbe said that we can ask the Aves that you've had enough Tainug of the Yidden the way they are in the Golden. And there's going to be a whole new Tainug in the Yidden, how they're going to be Liachai Bismelech HaMashiach, and that's Yitzchak. And the father, Frierdiker Rebbe, is called Yosef Yitzchak. Beide Sachen. Sei der Rebbe von der alle Yidden B'Shas HaGoles, und sei der Yidden of the Gile of Melech HaMashiach, wo jemand, ein Goles li'achrei mizeh chas v'sholem. The Gile she'ein acharei Goles chas v'sholem. That's the Yidden of the Cholem. And that's what the Rebbe in the famous Sikha, while I was there, I heard it from the Rebbe in Toshim Mem Hey. But the Rebbe said the famous in Tammuz. The Rebbe said that people say about him that he's a dreamer, that he dreams, that he talks too much about Moshiach. So many people in the village that need to learn these Sikhas because they're so key in Yonim. The Rebbe, I was there and I heard the Rebbe say it. And he says that he's verkocht so much in Moshiach that people say that he's dreaming. And so the Rebbe said we've got to decide once and for all who's dreaming and who is not dreaming, or who's dreaming and who's real. That's what the Rebbe said. Kach u'amar. Ein mal for alle men. In Yiddish that means we're going to decide once and for all who is dreaming. And the Rebbe brought the famous Maimon Torah this week's parasha. Shir Amal is a Hayinu Bashuv Hashem Shivatina Hayinu Kechel Mim. That we'll look back on the Golos and we'll see that we were dreaming. And the Rebbe brings over that the whole Golos is a dream. So Golos is a dream. And he said, B'yozeh, it's a dream, because in a dream, things that you know yourself can't really happen, they do, and yet not unless you're okay with it while you're dreaming. Unless it's a nightmare or something. And that's not, the Gemara says that that's a very unusual thing that's called a cholim bra. But when a man has a dream, he sometimes sees things that can't really be the case, and yet nonetheless he's okay with it. the same thing, he davens and he says to the Eibishter, oh, here I am, b'chol mei decha, and I'm shrikas and nefesh, with a gun to read, and then knocking down, and he says, oh, here we have in the world, what can we do? Got to be a man of the world. That's mamish the hof of what you were holding besides your daven. The Alter Rebbe said, does it even a dream? Does it ever a dream that you're okay with that? You can see steroids, contradictions, and you're okay with it. You're not. But anyway, whatever. So that's the Indian of a cholim. So he said that's a whole Indian from the Golas, that you didn't know what they should really be. But nonetheless they sort of managed to somehow or another come to terms with the fact that it's not really that way. So the Rebbe said he is not prepared to come to terms with that. And therefore he shrays the whole time. And the Rebbe said, if I don't finish this week, or Mashiach doesn't come this week, then next week I'm going to shray further. That's what he said. If Mashiach doesn't come this week, then you can be sure next Shabbos I'm going to be back here, and I'm going to shray weiter. He said, because we're going to be placed in this chalom, we're going to get out of this dream. And he said, the reality of a Yid is not the Golos. The reality is the Beis HaMikdash. And you got to realize, what is real and what is not real. And the Rebbe said clearly, people think the other way around. They think that, never, what we see in the Golos, that's the reality. And the Beis HaMikdash, wonderful ideas, there is a pink fakir. That you got to live in the Indian of the Geula, and you got to realize that over here in the Golos, that is the Dvarim Abilti Nachoinim, Abilti Realim. That was Lashonim. Not he knew the word Realim, but he meant Bilti Mamoshiyim. That was the words of the Rebbe. And Mamela Einu Doime Shmir L'Riyah, I both saw it and I heard it. I heard both. I had both Riyah and Shmir. And Mamela does the Indian of the Chalimas of Yosef, that they indicate to us on this side. That could be Dvarim B'Teilim, as Konzayin Zachen, what we don't understand, that the Eibishter Shikta Bilbo, and Nochazach Inyonim, which we don't understand. The Dvarim Shalom Ishkayim in Lafi, how we understood that it should be, v'chule, v'chule. But Afu Pikein Yankov Bina wasn't this powerful. Ulola Kach, it's a Beklau, B'Cheshban, and he knew, my Yosef said it, that it's going to be the case. Mikan Lomdu Rabbi Seinu, that our forefathers learned from Yitzhak Matthias that there could be such a union, that it didn't alter the fact that there was a mishap, that didn't alter the basic truth of the union. Mikan Lomdu Rabbi Seinu, She'ein Cholim B'lei Dvarim B'Teilim. Remember, there's nothing to be mishpo for the Golas. I feel that things don't seem to go according to the way we understood that they should go, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to have any kashiyas of a Tomah Chalil V'chas. There is a kashiyah. We shouldn't become mishpo. We should know that Yankov bin also had a shayla, but Afu Pikein he believed by Amunah Shleima that the Cholim was going to come about. Right on the spot. Not that he waited a few hours and then Shomer Sadova. Mamish up and plat. Yankov was beside the whole Indian. And that's the whole Indian. And Yosef, therefore Yosef is the leader and he's the beginner of the whole concept of Yosef and Yitzchak. And that leads after Yosef Yitzchak. That leads to Melech HaMashiach Kipshutei. And Mamela, it should be in the name from Chesed V'Rachamim, on Take of Miyad Mamish, we should all be together with the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe from Yitzchak and the Baal Shem and all the great tzaddikim and all the great manhigei Yisrael, Ha'amitim, Take of Miyad Mamish. We should be in the Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi, but that'll be then the Kiyum Amiti of all the Chaloimes, the Pisrei of all the Chalemes, and we'll see that was the emes of reality. Take of Miyad Mamish, Omein, Kein Yehi, Ratzah.
Yehi Adonai Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Le'Loi. Yehi Adonai Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Le'Loi. Yehi Adonai Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Le'Loi.
Shabbos is Shabbos in, Shabbos Mavokim. We'd like everybody to make sure they get to bed early on Friday night and get up, Mirz Hashem, and come over to join in saying Tehillim, Shabbos Mavokim, and the covering will be afterwards. And Sunday, bear in mind that it's a short Seder Sunday. The lunchtime is about half an hour earlier, the whole thing, because the first Hanukkah later Sunday night. That bear that in mind. And those who are going to Mivtzoim, they should let me know. I should have some sort of clear indication of where everybody's going. I'd like to know Monday, in the earlier part of the day. I'd like a list of everybody that's going on Mivtzoim and where they're going, if that would be too hard for someone to take care of. Okay, guys.
Yeah.
We can start a bit early.